Welcome, everyone, to episode 541 of Just Joshing. My guest, the incredible Alex Dawe. So, bud, I haven't done this in a while, so you have to forgive me for asking you this question, but if you have anything incriminating you'd like to say, make it good.
Just want to say I'm happy to be here, and I'm excited to have this interview. Thank you for having me on so much, especially so last minute.
Well, honestly, dude, it's really flattering. It wasn't really that last minute. You called me a few weeks back, and it's like, yeah, I was filling up the slots, and you're just like, yeah, let's do it, and it's like, cool, let's do it. So yeah. So what is your official? Are you writer, illustrator, rock star, world dominator? Like, what's your title?
I have many titles. My main one is I'm a writer and a publisher. I own Energy Comics. It's a small indie publishing firm where we hope to grow big enough one day to have a universe as big as Marvel or DC. And I'm the founder, and I'm also one of the head writers.
Nice. So, why decision to do your you just something like, obviously with the comic industry being what it is, it's always good to prove that you can finish a project. So, like, was this an aspiration to get into something bigger, or did you just always want to create your own stuff?
I always wanted to create my own stuff, especially my own superheroes. That's what Energy does. I've always had affinity for superheroes. Like, I grew up with Power Rangers and Batman the animated series and all those Bruce Timm shows that we love. And as I grew older, I realized some of my ideas, especially once I got into the greater reading as a fan, reading some of the greater universe stuff, I realized that ultimately it would be better to do my own thing because a lot of my ideas wouldn't fit into the canon of that. But also because I have more control over what I'm creating and just where to go with it and do my own thing, and really give the fans comics the right way. Because I'm as a fan, and I've heard what people really want from comics that they're not getting the mainstream, like the stories or the publishing, and that's what we want to do with Energy. We want to do it right by them.
So, a couple things to unpack here. So, do you before we go back and talk about like comics the right way, whatever that exactly is? That's an interesting question in of itself. What I want to ask is, this ideally is the goal, like the start and end for you is this company is going to become this larger than life intellectual property machine kind of deal. Is that what you want, or do you actually want to give yourself like a crack at some of the actual established properties out there too? I'm just like,
well, honestly, if I could get like a shot at writing some of the title series like Spider-Man or Batman, I would love to do that. I mean, let's face it, we would all love to do that. I think it would depend on what the story, if I would get noticed enough, and like what stories I would be allowed to write. Because I think a lot of writers want to do their own thing when it comes to the big title series. But ultimately, I also it's also like doing my own thing with the comics and my own NRG, because I have like I said, I have greater control of that, and I can tell the stories I've always wanted to tell with the big heroes that are mainstream, but with my own characters and the way I want to do it. So no worry about being pushed down from them, to put it lightly.
Okay, because so a couple things. It's interesting. Like, I think to get into like the we all have stuff we dream of doing. Yeah. For me, it's Green Lantern. Like, it's totally like I'm a Green Lantern guy. There's not a I would kill to do any one of them. I would because, and that's just me. But it's not my end all be all goal either. I think the thing is with comic books, especially graphic novels today, especially with the nature of how the industry has kind of grown, because we can talk about like Indiegogo and Kickstarter being very viable ways to make a living in the industry right now, which is crazy to think about. Like, even a few years back, that wasn't the case, but now, partially because of the pandemic, partially because of how everything has kind of gone, right? There's a tendency now to kind of look at things, right, and kind of say, hey, this is the we all have now our own properties we want to promote. Like, we all are looking at ourselves to some degree as a brand. Does that make sense to you? Is that kind of like how you see, like, part of why you did what you're doing too? You just see that game?
It does. That's a lot of big part of it. I think, like I said, we would all like to write for Green Lantern. I know I would. Like, Green Lantern is my favorite. Jeff Johns is one of the writers that got me into comics. But ultimately, I think with the pandemic and like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, it allows you to tell the stories you would want to tell, and also allow you to publish them in actuality. Because when you try and pitch something to the bigger companies, like not just Marvel, DC, but Image or IDW Publishing, there's a chance they won't take it. So with indie publishing, there's always more of a chance that you can publish it yourself. So I think it's a more availability that way. So you feel like.
Sorry, do you want to finish there or did?
No, go ahead.
Okay, no, because I think printing changes everything. Like I think that's the one like it doesn't matter like whether I interview authors and I interview other people, and the fact of the matter is that now publishing in general has diversified. There's a lot of different avenues you can go to as a creative, like founding your own. I think almost all of us, like, do you know what a hybrid author is?
I might do it. It might be something I haven't heard of, but I might know what you're talking about. Maybe go into definition for it.
Okay, so a hybrid author is somebody that publishes both traditionally, like getting accepted, pitched, and someone that does independent stuff as well, or crowdfunds. I think crowdfunding and indie comics or indie publishing have diversified enough that there is actually a different, because your goals are different. If you're doing crowdfunding, Indiegogo, if you're doing Kickstarter, right? You're not necessarily after you want as big an audience as you get, but it's literally a case where like 100 or 200 people, right, support you, and
that's true.
Support you,
yeah.
And that's a small number, but it's a capable number, and you're also ultimately serving, a lot of cases, serving niches that aren't being served in the bigger companies, right? In all fairness to the bigger companies, though, too. I mean, now it's almost a standard to get in. Like, can you finish a project? Like, can you go from start to finish on your own? Because if you can go on your own, you can definitely go with them. Because if you join them, like, I'm not gonna no naming creators because we don't need to slam anybody. But the last thing you want is like this big announcement of this incredible project that never happens.
Right. I think with what you're saying is true. Like with indie publishing, you like I said, there's more of the availability to actually start and end a project the way you want it to. It's like you don't have anyone like breathing down your neck to like work it a certain way, or like you have more of a controlled audience to tell that story to. And with indie publishing, that audience is key to being successful. You got to build that audience yourself. It's not like you can just start working for like a bigger brand and instantly you're noticed. You're putting the effort and the work for your audience. I know that because that's what we've been doing with our comics, and we're still working on building an audience. But we've got a pretty good following, and that just having that following, that number that we have right now, knows that we're doing the right thing, that we're making the comics that we want to, because we have people who follow us and want to read our stuff. So, which ultimately, when it comes to publishing and making comics, that's what you want. You want to have an audience to tell stories to, even if it's a small one.
Well, it doesn't have to be the biggest audience. It's your audience, right? That's the important thing.
Yeah,
so,
it's my audience. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's the world it's Alex Dawes' audience. It's because and people know it. And eventually, how many comics have you done at this point?
Well, let's see. So far, we've started 2 title series. One was Empress, Motherless Handmaid. That was our first series. And the one we got going now, which we're funding, is Zener, Master of the Mind. And we're looking to making that one successful. And then afterwards, we have plans for a 3rd series, and then a kind of 4th series that used to combine the heroes into a team. So kind of like a Fantastic Four title series. So 4 series that we plan to expand our universe through and tell stories with, and see if it takes off. All these other heroes that we have planned to tell stories with. So we have a plan.
Yeah. But you've already done a few. You've already got a few books under your belt at this point. So you've established kind of a bit of what you do already. So
yeah.
So what was the book? Like, I'm going to ask this question. We all have these stories we have that we read that makes us kind of want to do them. So what was yours?
Honestly, I think the book that I always say that the book that got me invested in comics, like truly as a fan and truly wanting to tell these stories, was Marvel's Runaways. And this is a true story. It happened on my 16th birthday in high school. I was in the library just looking for something to read, like during study hall time. That's what our school had. And I'm looking and I see we have a graphic novel section, which is pretty cool. Like not a lot of school libraries have that. And I noticed the first volume of Marvel's Runaways, and I liked the pitch of it, so I took it off the shelf. I started reading it, and I was just blown away by the idea behind it and all the storytelling and the art that I had to go to the comic book store and get more of these volumes. I started buying them, and then from there, when I ran out of Runaway stuff to read, I started exploring other title series like Zenscope Grim Fairy Tales or DC like Blackest Nights, and but part of it is I always just it wasn't like that's what I knew I wanted to start writing comics, but I think part of it was also that it was something that I always wanted to do because I grew up, like I said earlier, I grew up with superheroes. I was first introduced to them through Power Rangers and Batman the series, and it's just always the superheroes are just a concept that I've always loved, and I've always wanted to be one, but it's impossible to be one in real life. So making comics is the next best thing.
Well, I'm going to slightly disagree with you. I think you can be a superhero. I think I've had the fortune of interviewing some incredible people on this, and I think the fact that anyone going out and pursuing their dreams and their passions, no matter what they are, that's heroic. Like that's very, very, very heroic. And
sorry. When I say superhero, I mean like the classic, superpowers and fighting evil kind of thing. That's what I mean. I mean, there are definitely ways to like be a different superhero and different concepts. Sure. But yeah,
So I think my definition is slightly different. Let's see if you agree with me when it's over. If you disagree, we're cool. I no hard feelings. It's just one of those things, right? I think anyone that stands up in the world looking at a problem or an obstacle, whatever that might be, not only takes a stand but makes a difference. I think that's superhero. Because if you look at Batman, if you were to sit there, what Batman is, yeah, he's obnoxiously rich. It's the only way you could actually do this half the stuff he does. But in spite of all that, what you really break Batman down into, he is a man that wants to make sure what happened to him doesn't happen to anybody else, and he's willing to do it one step at a time. So he's taking an obstacle that's insurmountable. Right, really, if you sit there and think about it, and he's trying to carve a little difference one little inch at a time, which is a really, really, and there are people like with real life with like that battle like diseases or fights poverty or I think honestly, just doing this podcast has taught me something. I think superheroes, right? I think there's a lot more of us out there than you think, but I also do think I get what you're saying though. I mean, I'm not trying to that's just me just going like. I think there are real life superheroes. I just think we just don't wear tights.
Yeah. I mean, I realize that too, and like I fully agree with you. Like everyone has a cause that they fight for, and they like it's a big cause, and like maybe like completely uncurable, but they still fight for it nonetheless because it's important to them. And I do feel like those superheroes exist. I guess what I was just saying, is the classic comic book ones we grew up with superpowers. But still, But I agree with you that those superheroes exist, and those are the superheroes that I like too.
Yeah, well, they're the best ones because they're the ones they're the ones that show you anything. I love again, I'm a Green Lantern guy. Like I love the idea that anybody with enough willpower can change the world. If you were to sit there and think what the moral of Green Lantern is, that's really what this is. Spider-Man is obviously the classic. With great power comes great responsibility, right? And that's a very it's an old. Spider-Man's literally one of the oldest literary tropes in the world. He's literally the hero's journey, but he's probably one of the best ones that ever exist. So I'm gonna ask a really tough question. Let's see what your answer is: Power Rangers or Ninja Turtles?
That's a different. I mean, that's a very hard question to answer. I can't honestly. I say I prefer them both. I mean, what I love about Power Rangers is that it was adapted from another culture's definition of superheroes, like Super Sentai, and they were introduced through the mainstream and really blew up. And what I love about Power Rangers is it's always a new villain every week, like a new monster, some new crazy foe that's made up by a bigger bad in a bigger scheme, and they're just fighting them with all these different plots, and it's really cool. But what I love about the Ninja Turtles, and I really admire them. I mean, I'm not a huge fan where I religiously follow them, but what I love about Ninja Turtles is that what they're called what I call a throw against the wall idea. And the mind is there's such a random idea that someone just thought up one day that normally shouldn't work. You wouldn't think it would work as a concept, but it does because the creators treated it like an actual project. They made it into an actual story with character development and flaws, and like an idea of where to take the series and just how to introduce new things. They trained like an actual story, like a story that they want to tell, and that's why Ninja Turtles works so well. Is because when you pull it back, it has the basic storytelling elements that you need to make a project work, and like, but it's done with like such a random out there idea, and that works because they treat it like with passion and like personality. And that's what I love about the Ninja Turtles, and that's what I feel is that's what I try to create with my superheroes. You know, some idea that can be out there or randomly anything, but like if I treat it with my heart and like my passion, it's a story that people want to read.
No, that's fair. Like I love the Turtles. I love the Turtles a little bit more. I get what you're saying. Like, if we're gonna be blunt, Power Rangers had the better theme music. Just it had the better theme music.
And more variety of theme music.
Yeah. But that all said, what I really love about the Ninja Turtle like concept is it's really about a family. Like that's the thing I really, really dig about it. The Power Rangers are kind of a family, but not in the same way. Like these are four brothers. Like the Turtles are four brothers that literally grew up together. They have a dynamic. But I mean, I think the cool thing, but they're similar enough. They're similar enough that they're both fun. I mean, there's really not a loser there, but just one of those things where it's just like, what do you prefer, and what makes you kind of happier about it, right? So, but I digress. I just figured I asked to throw a fun one in because if you were in the Power Rangers era, you definitely were in the Ninja Turtles era too.
I was.
Yeah.
Like I said, if I'm being honest, based on your question, is I follow the Power Rangers more, so I think that would be my preference.
No. Hey, listen. Some of us like vanilla, some of us like chocolate. It's still ice cream at the end of the day, right? It doesn't matter, right?
That's
so,
it.
But no, that sounds cool. So, you said comics the right way, so what does that mean exactly in your mind there? Because I kind of feel it's a bit loaded because there's a lot of different comic styles out there, and some of them are fantastic. So,
well, I guess when I said that, what I meant is like I said, I as a fan, you know, I've interacted with other fans, and like I've heard what they don't like about the big stream comic industries, you know, like stuff they do or something they wish they do, or like with the distribution or the storytelling. And really, when it comes right down to it, when I mean comics the right way, it's just like we want to make our fans happy and give them what they want with that they don't get with the mainstream. So basically, we try to focus more on the storytelling and the development of the characters as opposed to like making like trying to force some big lesson into it, or you know, like our plan is to like give them affordable comics, you know, that they can enjoy for a fair price and say, okay, you know, this is worth the money I'm spending. You know, it's really just like hearing what the fans want and trying to give them that, you know, trying to be the company that they deserve.
No, that's totally fair. I ultimately that starts and ends with great stories. Like I think that's like we all want to be entertained. I think we've hit an interesting age where we're no longer just looking at larger companies. Don't get me wrong, we all have our like childhood things. I'm a Green Lantern guy probably until the day I die. Right. I love me some Ninja Turtles. It's the other book I'm reading right now still, but everything else is like I love like I've been loving what I've been reading with the indie comics movement. Like I've enjoyed. Peerless is like one of my favorite books. Like I really, really dug that. I'm looking forward to Nair X. I love that Bill Maas is getting to do some fun stuff there. I love the fact that the Incontesty by Rich Perot I'm really excited to get my hands on that physically. I already read the book. It's phenomenal. And what I'm really loving to see, and it's almost like, so we always have like Renaissance points in comics. There was the Image movement in the 90s. There's also somewhat the Valiant movement of the 90s as well. Valiant kind of fell off, but Image was the big thing there. And then we had the Image movement of like the early 2010s, which was really, really good. We had DC and Marvel in the 80s, and we have kind of what's happening right now. But unlike the other three, it's no longer like just one company's doing these amazing books right now. It's now these stories, instead of like this one pillar of great storytelling, it's like the pillars are diversifying more and more and more and more and more as the years go by. So it's been really So I kind of feel like we're in a comics renaissance. So my question to you is, like, what do you like when you started when you found yourself and it was like, holy crap, there's a lot of good books out there. How do I stand out? Or was it more along the lines of, oh my god, everybody else is doing cool books too. Neat. And right. So like, what was it for you when you kind of found yourself here?
Well, I think it was definitely trying to figure out how to stand out. When I was creating superheroes, admittedly I started with archetypes. That's like what people do. But then like eventually evolved into like, okay, how can I get away from this and like do my own thing while still appealing to what people love? I mean, I think that's really how, like a lot of my process goes. I start with an idea. It's often a challenge or just like a spark of inspiration, and I look at it, I expand on it, and it's like, okay, how can I keep going with this to a point where it's still it's at most the most original thing ever, but at the same time like takes the classic tropes and like that people love and inverts them and subverts them in a way that people still want to read them. So it's like I always know people are making comics. Especially like nowadays, I know that there are a lot of people on Indiegogo and Kickstarter trying to make their own projects, make them work. And but I think when it came out, when I was like creating my characters, right before I started doing it professionally, it was always like, okay, how can I make this character interesting, or how can I get this to stand out amongst the big two or something?
So your niche is superheroes. If I were to just like simplify this all, like you like doing superheroes. So my question is, do you play into the expectations and twist them, or do you go against expectations? Because we all like every story to some degree, we have an idea where it's going to go. If you read enough of them, you kind of get that feeling. But again, it's all in how you tell the story, right? So do you like playing with expectations and like I twist them in something completely different, or do you fulfill them just in ways you don't ever expect? Like, sorry.
Go ahead. Keep
no, keep going. It's your turn.
Well, honestly, when it comes to my writing, I'm learning more to just go with the flow, not try to plan everything out. Because I've learned that, everything that I try to plan out doesn't always happen like in the way I want it to. But honestly, when I think of it, I just kind of let this. Like I said, I'm trying to let the story take me where I go. If I get an idea of where I want something to go, I try to get to point A to point B. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, I'm just trying to figure out the best way to tell these character stories, like how to evolve them, like make them keep them on the constant heroic journey that is being a superhero. It doesn't just start with the origin; it keeps going from there. You keep going on the hurdles, and you're just like, okay, they've reached this point. Now, how can I challenge them even more?
So I'm gonna ask this then: when you come up with your characters, do you have like So I have like in literature when I write my literature stuff, I have like a beginning and like I call myself a planter. I plot a little bit, but like you, God laughs and it goes wherever it's going to go, and you kind of just gotta roll with it. But I do have a general idea where the stories end, and they do usually find their ways there. But what I'm getting across to you is, what I'm getting across to you is, it's like, do you have like because I think the thing with the big two comics, this is the big thing about them, especially not so much Image or Boom or IDW, but DC and Marvel, because these properties have been alive for so very long, you never see an Act 3. Like, you'll get Act 1, the origin, Act 2 is the tension and the conflict, but you very rarely get that whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow moment. In like, I love that. That is the best Act 3 for Superman. Still, like after all these years, it's still the best one. They don't do those very often because, again, comics by their very nature are serial. It's about keeping the soap opera going. But in your case, because you are a smaller company, you want to tell the best stories possible. I have found personally that having that Act 3, that finale, right, helps tell the best stories I can. So is that like, do you have like a finite tale with each character? I mean, you can obviously go back and expand accordingly, but you know what I mean, right? It's just like having an Act 1 and Act 2 and an Act 3.
I do understand, and we do have something planned for that. Like as it stands, we don't have the final act in mind yet. We're still keeping it open just to see how long we can go with those. But one thing Energy wants to do is keep a timeline in which, like, if a character's journey ends, or if they die, or like, we don't keep bringing them back to tell the same stories or like new stories. We want to explore ideas with new characters, keep the evolution of our universe going. So, like I said, it stands in. We plan to keep these going for as long as we can.
Yeah.
But like when it comes right down to it, if we're saying, okay, you know what, we're happy with this character. We're going to just like discontinue it, but then we're going to carry on their legacy with a new character or a different character, but it's going to be like new stories told with new characters and new means.
I think just a small clarification on my end. It's not that you like have, okay, this is going to be just 12 issues and this is going to be like the best 12 issues ever, right? No, it's more along the lines of, okay, we're going to go as long as we can make this work, as long as there's enough story to tell. But you have an ending. It's like, okay, we need to wrap this up. Let's wrap this up and let's satisfy everything we've built to this point.
Yeah, we have something like that in mind. I mean, like I said, like that's one of the things we notice about fans is that they want a timeline. You know, they want the things to evolve. They want new stories to be told, and we know this can't keep going with these mainstream characters, even though people love them. You know, because they've been around for so long. Like, but that's kind of what we want to do different. Like we want to keep going these characters going for as far as we can. We have like no immediate like issue limit that we have. We just want to keep going until we know that we've done all we can with like certain heroes or certain villains, and you know, it's just like, okay, we'll retire this guy. We'll leave them peacefully. We won't go any further. We won't overuse them. And it's like, okay, now I have this new story, and how can I apply this to a new character or a different character and focus on that? How do I make my universe evolve from that?
Okay. No, so I'm going to ask the dumb question, and forgive me if this is a dumb question. So when you're talking about a whole universe here. So does that mean like the narrative is about the whole universe, like a whole continuity base? Is kind of what you're like a meta story, for lack of a better term?
Well, I mean, like on that, when I say universe, I say a universe in which like we have a bunch of heroes who have like, their own individual stories and like journeys, and they all share the same universe.
Oh, you know, I just asked because you know continuity can be such a nightmare. Eventually, it's like, oh, I think. So actually, well, I'll ask this on the low side. Like here's my rule of continuity now for the big characters, right? I think the guy that tells the story has carte blanche to do whatever they want, provided they are consistent in their own story. Because when you look at something like Spider-Man, you look at something like any of these long-standing characters, there's no way to keep the continuity all. There's just no way. You can't do it, right? Spider-Man, Uncle Ben has to die. Gwen Stacy probably should be dead too, because that's one of the biggest things that happened to him.
Yeah.
But and I'm of the mindset he should be married to Mary Jane. He's actually
me too.
Right, yeah, I'm of that mindset, but I'm not against the idea of him being single either. It really like there's a that one's a little bit more fluid. But what I do think is, okay, let's say I write a Spider-Man story and I have Mary, like I tell the story with the characters there, and I don't cheat when I tell that story. Like that story is from start to finish my story, and when I'm done, someone else can come in and start brand new and do something completely different if that's what they want to do. But it's their voice, their story, their concept. I have to be consistent when I'm doing my own stuff, right? I have to be. I can't lie to my audience. I can't throw expectations off the curb, right? Right? I can't rely on the goodwill of what's come before too much. But when I'm finished telling my story, that's just my story. And then if it stays in continuity or if it goes in continuity, it's kind of like I don't worry about that. Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. I think we all want to be like the Frank Millers who come along and really revolutionize the character, and like what they put into their books just immediately sticks and becomes part of that continuity to the point where it's the most recognizable, and people just have to include this in like any reboot or something. I think we all want that. But at the same time, you know, if I ever got a chance to write the big two or even just my own stuff, you know, I do it with a sense that, okay, I gotta respect what's come before, and I can't change that. No matter how much I want to try. I mean, I could expand on it, but I gotta stick true to my own thing. I gotta take the stories that I want to tell and focus on those. You know, I can't worry about what's behind me, even though that is a big thing to consider because you got all these great writers before you. And it's like,
sure.
How do you live up to that? And it's like you can't. You just gotta do your own thing. You know, it's like.
Well, here's the thing, right? I look at like the great runs, like all the really great runs of all my favorite stuff. I can always reread those runs. Like I love Peter David's Aquaman, for example. I hated Eric Larson's. It just wasn't for me. And Eric Larson, if you read it, I'm sorry, but I just didn't like the work. You're a great guy. But right? I just didn't like it. That doesn't take away from the fact that Peter David still wrote 50 amazing issues of Aquaman, and I still
Right.
get that story all the time. I can reread that story if I really want that experience all over again, right? So I think like that's kind of where I sit on continuity at this point. And I'm just kind of curious about that, like where you sat on that, because with a smaller universe like yours, you're just building. You don't have to worry about screwing up so much because you're just getting started. But when you have like a bunch of stories on it, there's going to come up, and obviously there's going to come a point you're not writing every story either, right? So it's going to be like, oh shit, well they're going to go that way. It's not the way I would have gone.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to put the bin and you know, I mean, when you get to that point, let's say your universe really takes off, are you gonna be okay with that? You're gonna be like, just let it out. It's not mine anymore. It's not mine anymore. Or are you gonna be like, I need to be in control the whole way? Like where do you sit on that?
Well, it's funny you bring that up because I actually, since we're talking authors, I just watched this article, this interview between Frank Miller and Robert Kirkman. They were just talking about each other's careers and how they were inspired and stuff. And one of the lessons that I took away from it is that sometimes you gotta let like the writers who you're working with or the artists who come in, if they come out with something good, sometimes you just gotta let them work with that. Sometimes you just gotta let them be. And I think that's something I definitely have to keep in mind for the future because as much as I have an idea, I mean, if they have the capability to grant me something even better, that they just are blow up like with great art or great storytelling, it's like it works and I love it. I just have to get out of the way and let them do it. You know, I just have to trust that if they're giving me something this good, they do definitely have a plan. You know, and that's especially been the case with Zener, Mastermind, which our latest series, because I asked my my editor to write this because he had the writing style that I needed for such a character. And you know, he had a bunch of ideas that were different from what I want to do. But ultimately, when I let him have it and he talked me through these, you know, there was some resistance. But ultimately, what he's come up with is even better than what I ever had in mind for Zener. But again, when it comes right down to when I get to that point, I'm just like what I am going to make sure more than anything is that they just give us good storytelling, good character development. They stick to the bare necessities of writing, and if they do that, they remember that they just focus on making it good, not making this big spectacle about it or trying to be part of the mainstream stuff. They just focus on giving us good storytelling. I'm going to be okay doing whatever they want to do with the character.
So that's just a fun one because I'm speaking with some experience on this too. When you collaborate with your illustrators and letterers and colorists, do they like blow you away? It's like, wow, this is better than what I could have come up with in a million years. And they have ideas that maybe make it better than what you ever imagined. Isn't that like the coolest thing ever?
It is. It is very cool. You know, and part of it is because I try to be an artist myself, but I could never get the human idea. So I look at it, it's like, wow, like just seeing my character done by like these people have like amazing talents. Like it's a little envious. Like it's a little envious. I get to a point where I wish I could do it like them, but at the same time, you know, they're bringing your character to life, and what I want, and it's a magical feeling. And more than anything, you know, they enjoy bringing my characters to life, and that's what I want more than anything from my creators and illustrators. Is I want them to enjoy working on my character. I don't want to be stuck on a character that they don't like writing or illustrating. That's not fair to them. You know, I want them to enjoy that, and so far with all the illustrators I've had, they've all I've asked them this question, and they all said, yeah, I enjoyed working on this character. He's a cool character to draw or write for, and it's like I was like, good. That's what I want. I want our workers to enjoy this character as much as our fans do.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a smart man to realize you don't have all the answers. Like honestly, I mean, I just from my experience with collaboration, I think the smartest thing I ever did was trust my illustrators to one of them deliberately made me better, and I always thank her to the moon. But the other one's like, hey, what about this idea? And I'm like, well, what about this idea? Does it work? Right? Sometimes you'll argue vision a little bit. I think that's a reasonably good, that's a healthy argument to have, but never squash a good idea from somebody else. I think it's actually one of the dumbest things you can do.
Right. You know, I mean, trust me, I've gotten to a point where I get a lot of people like asking me, like sending me pitches for things that could happen eventually with my character. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's a possibility, but I mean, it's like, it's not something I could promise I use, you know? I mean, but it's like, I don't necessarily squash on their dreams. I just say, I thank you for pitching this. It's just like I just can't promise I use it. You know. I mean, it's not necessarily with the creators or illustrators I work with. It's like fans who read my stuff.
Oh,
You know.
sure. No, that's an interesting spot you're in, though, isn't it? I mean, you're now you like because you've done some things, right? You've now gotten the opportunity to be like, holy shit, Alex can do stuff. I wonder if he can help me. I mean, that's kind of what you take, even though you're still kind of getting your feet wet and you're still learning and growing.
Oh yeah.
Right. You're now getting that approach from people from all over, all the outside. So I guess I'm asking, isn't that kind of surreal? Like, isn't that like one of those things like I was you guys and now I'm here and it's like, what did I do? Right.
Yeah, it is surreal. And at the same time, it's a lot of pressure because, when these people come to you, they're expecting you to have all the answers. But like you said, being a writer is a learning process. You never have all the answers. And it's like you're still learning as you go. It's another thing I learned from the interview between Kirkman and Miller, because they experienced the same thing. It's like when these people come to you, you just want to like help them the best you can, like without necessarily if you're still learning, it's like they have high expectations for you. It's like I just got to give them the best answer I can. I just got to be honest with them and hope they take it the right way. Because let's face it, we've all been like there to a point where we weren't ready to hear like the criticism from our editors or our friends who were like just wanting the best from us. We all got where there was a point where we just thought we were all geniuses and we didn't want to change anything. But once we start listening to those, it was those kind of comments and feedback that made us better writers.
Yeah, no, so when I made the decision to do this for a living, I had to, my ego and me had to have some very hard conversations, right?
Yeah.
Ego, you don't know everything. And ego would say, but I do. It's like, no, you don't, right? So I had to have a real moment. I had to have a real moment where it's like, okay, what is this about for me? And for me, it was about like being the best creator I can be. That doesn't mean I'm good at everything. I think how long have you been writing? Just if you don't mind my asking.
Professionally, I want to say 5 years, since 2017.
Okay, you definitely know this. You realize how far you still have to go before you can see yourself good. Like that. I think the biggest fight you have when you've done some stuff, it's like, am I good? Like because it's because you don't know. Because there comes a point where you're like, I did the best I could. I put my stuff out there. I think I told a good story. Please let me tell a good story. And and sometimes you could fall flat on your ass. Sometimes you tell a great story, and you learn. There's things to learn. I think it's harder to learn from successes than failures myself. But yeah, man, I no longer. The way to combat the ego is just always have the mindset that I can always do it better. Right.
Yeah. And honestly, I still have those battles. I still battle with that. It's one of my things with my anxiety. It's like, am I going to be good enough to be like match up with like these writers, or if I tell an idea but I let them take my idea and I tell it better? I mean, am I helping in some way, or am I just an inadequate writer? It's like one of the biggest things I worry about is like, aside from my work as a writer, is it good enough to do it professionally? Like, can I make a living off of this? Do I really have the talent to like one day like be successful? Because let's face it, in the arts, they say art is suffering, and it really is. You suffer before you succeed, and it's like,
oh yeah,
it's this question of like how long you have to suffer or like struggle before you get your big break. It's something we all not only struggle with but keep struggling with. That's the thing about being an artist or like a craftsman. You're always going to be worried about whether your stuff is good enough or how it compares to other people. And really, it's like you just gotta power through, and you gotta be willing to ask the right questions, learn from your experiences, say, okay, I wish I had known this back then, but I know it now, so let's apply that to what I can do now. And honestly, I've experienced a lot of that within the last few years professionally, really, just with all my character creation and like my stories and my plans that I want to do. And it's like, because I've learned these lessons now, and I don't beat myself, and I'm just like, okay, now I know this is what I gotta do to just make good stuff and ultimately enjoy what I do without worrying too much. And honestly, I'm thankful for all those battles. That as exhausting as they were, I'm thankful that I had them.
So I got a There's a lot that actually I could talk to you about. So I'm going to ask this: what's more important, talent or belief?
Let's see. Well, I think it really. I mean, talent is. I feel like can be a little bit of a gray area because anyone can be. There are a lot of people who are just naturally good at doing something like being a good artist or a great storyteller. But I maintain to believe that anyone can do something like anything and everything, even if they can't do as well as others. But they just have to take the time and energy to actually make an effort to learn to do it. So like they can sometimes they can develop that talent if they actually apply themselves and do the work, because that's what like life is all about. You can't just do something and expect it to be good. You have to actually work to actually making it like success at it. But I think when it comes to belief, like if you believe that you have the ability to tell a good story or draw a good painting and apply yourself, I think that's important too.
Mm-hmm. No, I think ultimately I think belief is more important than talent, because talent in and of itself doesn't do anything, right? You have to at some point have the courage to go out there. Well, here I stand, here I am. This is my work. This is what I'm doing. And even if your work isn't necessarily the best stuff, and by the way, I'm not. This isn't like a criticism or
no. I understand where it comes from.
Yeah, what it is right. You have something out there, right? You have something out there. You have proof that you did it, and I think that says an awful lot. That says an awful lot about you as a person. It's not whether you're the best or the worst. Yeah. It's not whether you're at the best or you're at the worst. It's at the fact that you did it. You proved that you actually could finish a project from start to finish. Right. And the fact that you have all that, right? And the fact that you have all that goes a long way. Because if I was looking for someone to work with, right? Who am I going to, no matter how talented that other person might be, you have a finished project, right? I think that's a bigger point for you than, say, the guy that might look prettier or writes, like, I can write the cleanest sentence in the world, but it doesn't mean anything if I can't finish a project. Right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, like I said, I remember that this saying from this show I watched, like people that you could have talent. People respect that, but I mean, let's face it, talent doesn't really mean anything if you don't apply it and actually finish what you set out to do. I mean, anyone could say, like, anyone can be talented at anything. They could be the best in the world at anything, but they're not applying it. If they're not doing it for like they love, and they actually start something and finish it and have this finished project that show that they can apply it. Talent doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, when it comes to talent, I feel like anyone can be naturally talented or learn to be talented or something, so long as they put the effort into actually learning the craft.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm going to ask just a fun, like, a side question, because you are writing comics and you are publishing comics. Did you ever want to do novels or anything like that, or is it just like graphic novels? Or is your jam? Like that's what you want to do?
Funny enough, I've dabbled in some other projects. I'm actually gonna I've done short stories, which I like doing, and I've considered writing a novel. I thought of it as with graphic novels, I know immediately what story I want to tell. When it comes to a novel, it's a different medium, a different form of storytelling. So I have to consider, what project I would be passionate about to actually tell the story about. And if I'm being honest, a novel that I've always wanted to write would have to be like a noir crime thriller, because I love noir fiction, like the Roaring '20s. I wish I had been in that era with the suits and the jazz and like the detectives and the crime. It's an era that appeals to me. One of my favorite movies is Motherless Brooklyn. It's a recent one that came out. I'm not sure if you saw it, but David Spade, like Sam Spade, all those characters. It's something I've always wanted to write because I'm drawn to, and I considered even this summer I considered taking the time off to just write a series of short stories based around the genre and maybe turn it into a novel or something. At the most least, I might try and look for like a graphic novella, something that's mostly text but has images to it. So,
have you ever seen a Japanese light novel?
I think I'm familiar with those, but I haven't personally seen one.
It's similar. It's a novel. It's kind of like a novel with illustrations on the inside.
Right.
I'm a big fan of that format myself. I think
Yeah.
The one thing I love about comics is it's words and pictures coming together to tell a great story, and I feel like pictures can play like even in prose. I think pictures can play a big role in helping tell your story. I just feel that it can't like it's just it's the difference in the weight, right? In a comic book, the illustrations are your storytelling. Like as much as right, that's the weight. In a novel, like a light novel, the illustrations enhance the storytelling, much like the words enhance the illustrations in comics. Like it's almost like an inverse, right? Some pictures, lots of words in a light novel. Comic, lots of pretty pictures. Some words, potent words, right?
Yeah. So. Yeah. Like I said, I have a whole bunch of like writing endeavors I want to do, like a collection of short stories based on just a small theme or just ideas I've had. Like a novel, again, depending if I could find the right idea to write for. It could be any genre, honestly. I've even like in college, I took like a playwriting course, and I liked that. And I've always had this dream to turn Nightmare Before Christmas into a Broadway musical because I'm a huge musical fan. So let's see. I have a lot of creative endeavors I want to do, not just writing.
So just for fun, what are your music favorites? I'm curious.
Like musicals or just music in general?
Musicals, because you said you wanted to do a musical somehow. So so what inspired you?
Well, let's see. Well, the first musical I ever saw as a kid right here in Des Moines when it came to Civic Center was Cats, and that was like a very this was like when they were still doing the costumes and everything, and that's an eye opener for a musical to first see. But I've seen some of the classics like Mamma Mia and Les Mis. I love those. But I also like some of the new stuff. I've listened to the Beetlejuice musical, and I'm enthralled by that. And it's just like, to me, it's so long as the storytelling's good and the music is great and you have good visuals, you have a great musical. So
I've had the fortune of interviewing some musicians that have dabbled in the comics, and just from your end, because you do have musical aspirations. Do musicals kind of feel like comics to you?
They do, and in fact, in a lot of ways, they feel like comics. You have a visual storytelling, you have people speaking, but they're not just doing it through movement, images, and words. They're doing it through song. That's an added element that you can't do within comics. You have in a musical, you can sing about anything, you can dance about anything, in the moments, and it's not like with traditional music where it's like usually about love or something. It's like it's just whatever it's at that moment in the story, and you're bringing it to life through a greater art form.
Okay, because they almost feel like they have similar beats. Like I was talking to a few of them, it's like it feels like it's the collaborative process between the mixing a variety of mediums together to create the story. There's definitely a crossover there. Yeah. But no, so I guess I'm gonna ask one last big one then: movies, yay or nay?
I do love movies. Again, it comes down to good storytelling or like good acting. Let's see. I'm a big. Some of the movies. Obviously, I'm a huge superhero film fan. I don't think there's been a superhero film that I haven't enjoyed. I mean, some I'm more than others. I mean, I actually like the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie.
I don't mind it.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the first movies I ever saw as a kid. My favorite Batman films are the Tim Burton ones, just because Tim Burton's my favorite director. I do love all the Marvel universe stuff. I feel like that's a good way of telling a superhero story, like with like the drama and the humor and the action. It's a good balance. But outside of superhero films, let's see. I think my favorite is like animation. Yeah, I'm a big cartoon fan, and my favorite era of animation is the Disney Renaissance. So you have the Lion King, you have the Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is one of my favorite movies, and then you have like Tarzan, Mulan, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and then you have like the new form of animation, which is all 3D, but you have like these epic stories being told, like Frozen or Moana or Coco, and like even like non-Disney stuff like Shrek, How to Train Your Dragon, Kung Fu Panda, just all these. You get like to me, cartoons are like the visual comic books because you have like any outlandish idea you can tell, and people will watch it so long as the story's good. So it's almost like a visual comic book, like a movement comic book.
It's storyboards with motion, right?
Yeah.
So, It's
Yeah.
totally storyboards with motion. And
It's panels with motion.
yeah, so I mean, I totally get that. I totally dig that. It's one of those things where I completely understand that. I can completely understand the appeal there. For me, I still prefer the 2D to 3D. I think it's because that's. I think I figured it out. Like I am the kind of guy that really digs. Like I love to imagine. And I think 2D animation lends more to imagination than 3D does. That doesn't mean 3D isn't good. I think 3D is. There are some incredible things you can do with 3D animation, but I feel 2D gives you that sense of this is a story, and it's easier, oddly enough, to buy in. At least for me. Maybe because I'm old. I mean, that might be a big part of that, but it's one of those things I just recognize. Like I can't. Like Monsters Inc. is a fun movie, but give me the Lion King or give me Aladdin or give me the Little Mermaid, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not like the biggest Little Mermaid fan, but it feels I can get more engaged in it for some reason. Maybe it's just because this is what I grew up with. So.
Well, here's to me what the difference between the 2D and 3D animation. Going off what you said, to me is 2D animation, especially with like cartoons and like Nickelodeon and like Cartoon Network, Disney, is that there's more creative to do it your own way. No cartoon looks the same way in 2D animation. They all have their own styles based on the artists or the creators or the story. But with 3D animation, I mean, let's face it, some of those models, even if they're anthropomorphic or just monsters like Monsters Inc., they still look similar. I feel like you're still limited on the like kind of this visual storytelling with like 3D animation because it's still like similar 3D mediums. But I think with like 2D, like you have like Looney Tunes, Ben 10, you have Johnny Bravo, you have all these different stories that are the wacky ideas. But what really separates them is the style in which the characters are brought to life. And that honestly makes me wish that Disney was still doing 2D animation for their movies too.
Yeah, I kind of wish it was more there. I do. Like it's one of those things where I look at it and kind of go, it would be great if you were 3D, right? It's not 3D, it's 2D. But I understand too. Like nature of the business changes, and I think as we get more complex 3D models, maybe they'll move past that. I'm not as crazy about the live action remakes. I really think they should just leave that stuff in the past. But again, like I said, I also recognize this too. And I've come to this. I've made peace with this. I'm not cool anymore. And this stuff's not made for me. And I can accept that.
I mean, with the live action stuff for me, I guess it could be a hit and miss. I mean, if it's not your own thing. Personally, I love seeing the classic stories told in different mediums. But, I mean, again, there are some that I'll watch, some that I won't. I'm still waiting for Hunchback of Notre Dame to be made into a live action film. That's because I think it'll be like good. It's one of my favorite stories. I honestly love them to do like some sort of live action version of Nightmare Before Christmas. That's my favorite anniversary ever. But again, I think it's like a hit and miss sometimes. I know what I like in terms of animation and just storytelling. And I think we all, and when we know that, we all wish it was more of that.
Yeah. And like I say, it's about being mature enough to realize that it's not always about me. I know.
Yeah.
It hurts the ego. Ego takes a little beating there, but it's not about me. It's
And I know that it's somewhat more like faster and more cost effective to do than the 2D animation. That's supposed to 3D animation, like there's a lot more ways you can do it faster and like on time. But I feel like, but that's one thing I like about 2D animation is like it took longer to do, and the movies were more spread out. It's not like Disney was like with their 3D, they were pushing like for a new movie every single season. Like the movies were more spread out. I think that's what made them so like fun and to watch. But on that note, one thing I want to point is one of my other creative endeavors is to take a classic fairy tale and put a Disney princess spin on it. Like I always thought it'd be like fun to put my own spin on Goldilocks and the Three Bears, like a fairy tale that Disney hasn't touched on. Because let's face it, fairy tales are their bread and butter. They have some good original stuff, but fairy tales have always been their bread and butter. Like I just want to do that, but that'd just be my one and done project.
Yeah, no. So I mean, if you really sit there and think about it, like no matter what we are into or what we're not into, if you really sit there and think about it, every story's kind of been told before. Like every one of them.
Yes.
It doesn't really matter. What matters is what we bring to the table. Like, for example, it's not the fact that I'm telling a story about Alice in Wonderland's Greek mythology. That mashup's been done before in some other various ways. It's the fact that it's me telling the story. And the details that are important to me, the things I care about with these characters, right? That's the stuff that can't be duplicated. Everybody has their own way of telling the unique way of doing it. And vice versa. Like, you're doing superheroes. Superheroes is essentially, in general, not completely, but in general, one or two archetypes. That's really it. But that's just like, it's one of those situations where creativity, I think, can be enhanced by the fact of the limitations that are there, right?
Yeah,
and
I totally agree.
Yeah, so it's one of those things like it's a weird thing to say that. I mean, in one odd sense you have the most competition, but in another sense you don't, because there is only you're Alex Dawe. You're the only Alex Dawe. So any story you tell is just gonna be yours. That's it. No more, no less.
Yeah, people often ask me like who I would want to be, like the next Frank Miller, the next Stan Lee, and I would love to be those. But more than anything, I want to be the next Alex Dawe. I want my name to be known and stand out amongst the crowds, like maybe even greater than the big ones. But just like, I don't want to be just referred to as the next Stan. That's a great honor to be referred to as the next Stan Lee or Kirby or Miller or Kirkman. But I mean, more than anything, I want my own name out there. I want people to see my name. It's like, okay, I know his stuff. I know what he did, and he is different from them, and that's why I like him.
So then I'm going to ask this: who are your favorite comic creators all time?
Let's see. Well, I feel like I relate to Stan Lee a lot because he had a whole bunch of ideas that he wanted to do his own way. He had Spider-Man, Hulk, and Iron Man, and Thor, and like not a lot of people wanted to go for them. He's like, no, Stan, you can't do it. We have this way. It was like he told the story. He's like, okay, we were wrong. You could do it. Like that shows like sticking true to your principles, and like showing that when you have good ideas, you can make them good. I also like Frank Miller, especially his Daredevil run, because Frank Miller to me is like the ultimate noir writer, and like he's the only one I know who truly does superhero noir great. He's got all these great ideas, and like one of my ideas I want to do is like a superhero noir like story within our universe. And the first thing that always comes to mind is like, okay, like Frank Miller comes to mind is like, how can I do like him but like different? It's like he's got some great ideas. And then there's Robert Kirkman. Honestly, the three title series that I admire the most, is Invincible, Savage Dragon, and Spawn. And the reason I just admire these titles for so long is because they're not as long as some of the more like action comics or detective comics, but they are still going strong. And or in this case, Savage Dragon and Spawn are still going strong with their own universe because the creators are still working on them. They're telling the stories they want to do it, and they're living proof that they can make it against the bigger companies as their own like superhero story. It's not like you have to be part of the big two to have your own superhero. It's like you can do your own thing, and they are doing their own thing. They're doing it the way they want. They're still going strong. Spawn's made it past 300 issues. Like Savage Dragon is approaching 400, and Invincible, it's had its run, but it's incredible long that everyone just can read again. It's like those are the three that I look up to more and aspire to be like.
It's funny you mentioned them, like Eric Larson. Like I trashed his Aquaman run, but his Savage Dragon run is great. Like I think it's the embodiment. Like if you want to talk about a comic book run, it's literally the embodiment of passion. That is the run. It's better. As much as Spawn, like McFarlane has done some really cool stuff with Spawn. The fact of the matter is, like Savage Dragon is Larson's book. Like it is completely his, and he owns it, and he goes to town with it, and he has fun with it. Now, like, it doesn't make him as money as he used to, but the fact of the matter is that doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is he still puts out good books when they come out, and that's his book. Like that's the book that when it's all said and done, I mean, I don't think about Eric Larson on Spider-Man. I think about Eric Larson on Savage Dragon because that's what he does, and he's great at it. Yeah. I actually think Invincible is my favorite Robert Kirkman book. It's
mine too. Definitely.
It's not even because it's a superhero book. It's just I honestly feel The Walking Dead, after about 3 or 4 hours, like once you get past the governor is just a sadistically like Like that was unique, even for that run. But once you get by that, it's essentially the same thing. Invincible was very much it was very true to the superhero concept, but it inverted it in such a neat and interesting and fascinating way that that it was like, and honestly, I feel like his heart was into that one the most. Like I'm really happy that I'm seeing it, like they're making it a cart. It looks like a series with it now.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really happy to see that because I think, to be honest, I know Kirkman's probably going to get remembered the most for The Walking Dead, but truthfully, I think his heart was in Invincible the most. That's just my opinion, but
I think so too, and I think Kirkman's book will always be invincible to me. I know he got a big blow up in pop culture with Walking Dead, but Kirkman's Invincible will always be like my go-to story for him. And one of the things I like about Invincible is that it had a lot of what the mainstream comics did have. Like specifically, it had a timeline. You know, the characters evolved, they grew up, they had like a shifting in generations, like new things were developed. They never tried to change things in the past. Like you even did a story where like they could have rebooted and done things different, but like but the character Invincible was like, no, I want to go back to my universe. I want to do it that way. Like and Kirkman took that. He took those tropes and he's like, no, this is a story I want to tell. This is I can't go back to this. I have to keep going forward, and that's what I want to do. You know, I want to show this is a story where it's a character learning about being a superhero and all the different ways you can do it, and he's going through different emotions, trying different things, and sometimes it's not working, sometimes they are, and he's learning from them. He had a timeline, and a canon timeline that evolved, and like that's one of the things that a lot of people want to see in the big two, but Kirkman had that.
Well, it's one of those things where Kirkman, like Invincible is probably the closest thing to Spider-Man in terms of the original Spider-Man run, where
Right.
Peter was in high school, he went to college, he became an adult, and there's a point when he became an adult, he just stopped aging. And I get it too. Like again, from a money standpoint, from a franchise standpoint, you don't never like we talked about the lack of Act 3s in comics, but the big reason why it's not because they don't have an ending for some of these characters. Like I said, whatever happened to The Man of Tomorrow by Alan Moore and Kurt Swan is one of the best Act 3s you'll ever read, ladies and gentlemen. But when you get right down to it, comics make their bank on their buck for the longevity. It's not the fact that even there's a new Spider-Man issue coming out. It's all the Spider-Man issues that came before. It builds and it builds and it builds and it builds. And if you end the story, especially if you got Action Comics has got 1,000 issues. Like that's monumental. That may never like Action Detective will probably never be done again. I will not see Spider-Man 1000. I will never see it. Right? That might be because I'm dead. But I mean that's a possibility. But yeah. I mean, the odds of seeing that are so slim. But the fact is, like, do you stop Superman now that you've gone to 1,000? No. Because honestly, like this is where business meets creative. From a business standpoint, you want Superman out there.
Yeah, and you know, on that note, and the thing about that is like Spider-Man and like you know, Spider-Man is the closest that ever had to like a continuity in their story with like Miles Morales. You know, I mean, I will always be a classic Peter Parker guy, but with the Ultimate Universe and Miles Morales, they took a chance to like end a run and make a new character carry on the legacy, and it was living proof that they could do it, and they had a good character to sell the similar story to, like redo the stories but in their own way, and like that just shows it can work. And like with Action Comics and Detective Comics, you know, the thing is like I know those are like centered around Batman and Superman, but like the fact that they're like referred to as something else could also mean they could continue this story, this series, but it wouldn't necessarily just have to be with Superman and Batman. They could have like a whole bunch of superhero like stories going there. Like, I mean, in fact, like, wasn't that like one of the things of like New 52? Like, they tried something with the Brave and the Bold. Like, I was like all these different heroes storytelling. That's something they could do. But that shows they can keep doing that. They can keep the series going. They just gotta like. I think would help is like if it wasn't just necessarily just about Superman and Batman. You have all these. Because like DC has a great line of detective characters in their own way, or these larger than life superheroes. Like besides Superman, like they deserve the spotlight too.
Yeah, but like this is like I said, this is a good problem to have. This is a problem you want to have someday. Do you walk away from that 800? So for Action Comics' 1,000+ book run, Superman's been about 900 of them. Like there's been points where he hasn't been the main character in Action Comics here and there, but let's be honest, it's Superman's book, right? And Batman, same thing. Like I don't know if it's quite that many, but there are issues where Batman isn't in Detective Comics.
Right.
So few and far between. So when you change, like you make a change that radical, like this is the thing about publishing. Publishing has risk, and because the margins are so slim in publishing, there's almost a certain risk aversion to some of these things. And again, this is a good problem to have. You get to that size, but it is something to consider too, right? Sometimes the money, sometimes the more lucrative play is to turn your franchise into the equivalent of a fast food joint. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I don't want to spend the rest of my life eating McDonald's, but I'd be a fool to not to acknowledge that the business model isn't sheer genius.
It
you know
is.
what I mean? Right? I mean, I don't want it, but we've all done it, and you know, I hope never to touch a French fry again because I've seen that, and that's horrifying. But you get the idea, right? It's just one of those things where you acknowledge the business, not necessarily the creative, and that's fine. So I think before we get to the wonderful plugging of books, I think I'll ask this: is the story always going to be the most important thing with your universe? Or if you do get to that point, I mean, I'm just saying, like this is like a good business, moral, ethical thing. I don't think there's a wrong answer here, but you know what I mean. It's just like if you ever get to the point where you're big enough that it's lucrative to keep, like you get a hit with a character, like you get a big hit, like are you just going to finish telling the story as you know it? You might expand it a little bit, but I mean, will you still go to the finish, or will you try to look to expand it as long as you can?
Honestly, I think that'd be a question to answer when it comes.
Okay.
If I'm being honest, but honestly, like I'm hoping that, with some of the characters, like, even if they blow up to a big point, it's like I would have to ask myself, can I actually keep going on this? Can I actually tell more stories without? Is my heart going to be in it? Because honestly, I've learned through my process what stories I'm passionate about creating, and just like what I know I want to create in the stories, and like those come easier to me. It's like, but if it stops coming easier to me, do I honestly want to keep pushing it? Do I? Because I don't want to work on a book that I'm no longer happy on. But again, I think a lot of part of it is going to have to come to right down to when I actually get that point, and that's going to be a question.
And that's a fair question. I always it's always interesting to me because I always going to get a sense of the head and kind of like where you want to go. And it sounds to me your creativity really does matter to you. And honestly, I applaud that, man. I wish you nothing but the best going forward. I'm rooting for you.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If I can make a monopoly out of one character, like all this franchise, all this media, all this, I'm going to shoot for it. But more than anything, I want it to be good. I don't want it to be just cheap products and just stuff messes. Because I've seen when people try different things with lots of characters, it's like Teen Titans versus Teen Titans Go. I mean, let's face it, a lot of friends prefer the original Teen Titans series. I know I do. It was like the Teen Titans. It's just too out there for me. It's like. I mean, a lot of kids, they like that. Although I maintain they probably don't know good storytelling, but at the same point, everything I do, whether it's a spinoff or like a new series or a new take, more than anything, I want it to be good. Because that's the only way you actually succeed with those things is if it's worth the investment and you're making it worth the investment.
Okay, no, that's fair. I figured this would be an interesting avenue to go down because a lot of people talk about, I'm hoping. I was like, what? Let's just assume you become successful. What would you do with it? Yeah. So, on that note, I think we have an interview here. What do you think, sir?
I definitely think we have an interview. One of the best ones I've ever been on. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've never gotten into questions this deep before. Usually, it's about my comic series, which don't get me wrong, it's like promotion. I like that, but I never had a chance to really talk about these kind of subjects with people before.
Well, I look at it you're going to get the plug in just a second, so you can plug all your work to. I just feel, this is just my opinion. Your work is, especially in this, we live in a digital age. I mean, the fact is, we're having you're in the United States, I'm in Canada, and we're having this conversation. We're probably a few hundred miles away from each other, that's cool. I mean, that's an amazing thing.
What part of Canada?
I'm in Windsor, Ontario, like right across the border from Detroit. So like not that far from you, but far enough, right?
Right.
And the thing about that is, right, we are in the age of access. Writing a good book is the first and always the most important thing. But I think the second most important thing is get a sense of who you are as a creative. And for this last hour and a bit, we got a sense of who Alex Dawe actually was, and we had some fun. We talked some great comic book series, and we actually just, we just chilled, which is why I honestly, like, I don't know about you, but when I love talking comics. Hey, Jagtress, it's Jagtress. Hey, Josh, and yes, this is Alex Dawe. Alex is awesome. He's amazing. We're just coming to the end of our conversation, but Jag, I always love having you on here. Thanks for showing up. But before I wrap this up, you are on Indiegogo. You do have your Energy Comics. So what's your universe about? Like what's the philosophy? Talk about your current release and how people can find you.
Well, our project at Indiegogo is Zener, Master of Mind. And like the quick pitch is, it's what happens if you take a morally upbeat, Boy Scoutish character like Superman, and you give him Batman's dark related problems, and you see how it affects him mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, and psychologically. Because Zener is the story of Axel de Vera, a man born with immense psychic powers, not just telepathy and telekinesis, but like dowsing, mediumship, aura reading, illusion casting, all those. But the problem is he experiences trauma in his life that damages his mind to a point where he can't use his powers properly, and he's locked into the asylum. But and this story tells his origins from the minute he gets his powers to the minute he puts on the costume the first time, and everything that happens between. And the plan for the series is to explore, how someone like this who has like that mental instability when you need a strong mind to use psychic powers, how do you go from that? How do you still be the best you can be when you're your own worst enemy, which he is? And he's caught in the middle of all these powerful people who want to use him for their own means or destroy him to get him out of the way. And and you can find that on Indiegogo right now. It's funding. We only have a week left in the campaign, so get their support it, donate, and then share with all your friends and family and relatives on social media. And you can find NRG Comics at our website, nrg-comics.com, or we're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and DeviantArt.
Awesome. Well, everybody, this is going to be it for me this week for streaming. It's Easter weekend, so no drink and draw this week. Support Alex's project if you can, because it's near the end. I'm taking a look at it right now. I wish I could. I'm kind of in the middle of a transition, but maybe the next project you do, I'll definitely give a look at it. And you're welcome to come back whenever you're ready for your next series. So I
would love to. I would love to just come back down and just have this type of conversation again.
Yeah.
And I'll put you in contact with my editor and my artist. I'm sure they would love to be on here and ask those same questions.
Sure, I'd love to have them. But for everybody else watching, thank you guys for watching, listening, however you're doing this. Hit the follow button on Twitch, twitch.tv/JustJoshing Podcast. Hit the like button subscribe button on my YouTube channel, Joshua Panteloresco. I'm on everywhere, pretty much every audio platform you know. And Jag, thanks you, by the way. And Jag, Alex, Jag. It's pretty. It's pretty.
Nice to meet you, Jag. Thanks for tuning in and checking out our stuff. Thank you. I'm so glad you think it's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So for everybody else, stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. Have a happy Easter for everybody out there. And Monday is going to be the start of Streamer Week, which is going to be fun. I'm interviewing all kinds of streamers next week, and it's going to be a blast. And then we're going to be back to regular guests the week after. So to everybody, keep watching, keep rocking, and I'll see you guys next time.
Happy Easter. Take care, guys.